Communication Outreach and Advocacy Unit, TERI, to take the session forward.
Distinguished by its customer-centric programs and digitization.
Thank you, Pangana. I hope everyone can hear me.
All the service rendered by the corporation.
Quick response
Yes.
team.
Yes, yes.
And my screen is there, and I hope everyone can see the screen as well.
We are happy with the
Sure.
IPCM
Yes.
Yeah.
authority.
The annual flagship event of TERI is hosting one of its pre-events within the Bengal Chamber's annual conclave today. I welcome all our participants, guests and speakers for this event who are on the Zoom platform as well as on YouTube and the other platforms that the Chamber has already set up. The Chamber and TERI's partnership is growing stronger, as Dr. Mathur mentioned.
How did India Power do?
While WSDS 2021, which Dr. Mathur did mention in the previous session, will be marking 2 decades in February next year. And given the current global crisis, it is inevitable that all of us, countries, businesses, and the common man, now need to review and explore new patterns of growth for the future. Hence, the summit theme this year is redefining our common future, safe and secure environment for all. TERI has set up a lot of activities in the next 18 months. It proposes the following 4 phases and this includes pre-events. The one today is the 3rd in the series, and we shall host several more in the coming months, and all these discussions will converge at WSDS 2021 with some dedicated sessions with business leaders focusing on their green business efforts. Post the summit in February, we shall host consultations with diverse stakeholder groups to put together a charter of action for COP26. Finally, at WSDS 2022, we once again need to evaluate and strengthen the COP26 deliberations, assessment and outcomes. I have to mention that the Bengal Chamber, who needs to be abundantly thanked for this platform, as Dr. Mathur himself did it, but I am reiterating what he said, particularly Mr. Dev Mukherjee and his colleagues Angana and Suchismita. We are delighted that we have been able to use this platform to have this pre-discussion today. We would also like to acknowledge again our appreciation to Bloomberg Philanthropies, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, USAID, and Tata Cleantech Capital Limited in supporting our activities over the next 18 months. Further, the British High Commission's support in the pre-COP discussions will indeed be valuable. It is indeed a proud moment for us at TERI to have these partners, and we invite all of you who are participating through this and on the work. With this, may I request Mr. Ajay Shankar, Distinguished Fellow, TERI, to deliver his special address at the Kolkata Virtual Sustainable Growth through resource efficiency. May I also, before he begins his session, invite all the participants to kind of put in all your questions to the ensuing discussions that takes place with the speakers on the chat box that is already available to share. So please share your questions and make this discussion as vibrant as we want it to be. Thank you and welcome you all to the 3rd virtual Sustainable Action Dialogue of the WSDS 2021. Over to Mr. Ajay Shankar.
Thank you, Annapurna. It's a privilege to be speaking at this important event and at this juncture. I'm conscious that we are running a bit late, so I think I'll make my remarks a little shorter than I had planned to make them. The topic that we have right now is economic growth through resource use efficiency. And this is intrinsic to the whole discussion that is taking place across the world and the whole conversation around achieving a truly circular economy. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, we were living a sustainable ecosystem. We were fully renewable and sustainable in all that we did for thousands of years with agriculture before the Industrial Revolution. Now, the success of the Industrial Revolution has been unimaginable and it's given us lifestyles, consumption levels, comforts, which were beyond the wildest dreams of those who lived before the Industrial Revolution. But that confidence in technology and science also gave us some hubris. And we didn't quite see the consequences of what we were doing. So starting with the first concerns on global warming and climate change, we are now acutely conscious of the limitations of what the resources of the planet can sustain over time. And resources, I would suggest, mean both. The natural resources that we use and also the way we affect natural resources by what we put back into the system after consumption as waste. So at both levels, there are serious challenges. The most dramatic one is, of course, on climate change, where the latest IPCC report is quite alarming and worrying. And again, I would like to mention here that TERI had a leading role through its then Director General, Dr. Pachauri, in steering the IPCC process and bringing the serious consequences of global warming and carbon emissions into the common consciousness of people across the world. But going beyond carbon emissions, we have a problem on just about everything. In India, we have a serious problem on water. In North India, we've been mining water, and I don't see how we can sustain that kind of agriculture for very long. In fact, if I were to speak very frankly, I would say the water crisis is like the iceberg of the Titanic, which will hit us in India before global warming hits us. And the way forward in this century across the world is to use the power of technology and persuasion and regulation to achieve a fully and truly circular economy. Because the planet has boundaries on about just everything. So we need to move in that direction very quickly. Fortunately, technology has brought us to a point where the recycling industry, especially in Europe and Japan, has moved very far. And therefore, it is now theoretically conceivable that a truly circular economy can be achieved in the coming decades, which would mean that for every finite resource on the planet, we will create a sustainable lifestyle of consumption and production where that finite resource is not exhausted in the foreseeable future. Or if it is something which can get exhausted, then we create new ways of meeting our needs, as is happening with renewable energy vis-a-vis fossil fuel-based energy. But we have to take this across the entire spectrum of production and consumption and waste management and recycling. Now, if one has to see economic growth through this prism, and we need to and we should, then there are three ways of looking at it. One is that firms which are smart, which value their brand, and have deep pockets should lead the way in being responsible producers and responsible managers of the waste of the products they produce. And they can go in the market and say that they are, more green than the others and even command a price premium. After all, with the organic agriculture, we are seeing a price premium in the market. The other is that if they are ahead of the curve, then the day when regulation would come in, they would be well prepared to succeed in the market where there is regulation. Then we have the community of scientists, technologists, research institutions, R&D institutions, and startups who have a very, very wide canvas within which to get bits and pieces of the challenge of moving towards a fully circular economy and creating technologies, getting patents, and be in a position to make a lot of money as the market for their discoveries and inventions and patents becomes mature or ripe. So I'll just give one trivial example. Today, the entire electric vehicle industry and the mobile phone and laptop are all driven by lithium-ion batteries. Now, whoever can come up with a battery which would be a substitute for lithium-ion batteries, even with some limitations, and gradually it will get better and better, has a huge market waiting for their patents and for their inventions and discoveries. So one could list lots of these things, and I think the challenge for those of us who are really engaged in pushing the agenda for circularity and resource use efficiency is to have serious conversations, identify the technological challenges, bring them center stage, get some resource allocation for R&D funding within India, within the rest of the world, and see how we can achieve progress more rapidly than we have achieved so far. And I'm a great optimist. I'm sure that once we all get together, we would really surprise ourselves and the world, and how quickly we can make a transition to a circular and a fully sustainable economy. Thank you. And with this, I would request my colleague, Souvik Bhattacharya, to now make his comments. And to all the other panelists, my request would be to be a little briefer than they had planned to be earlier.
Good evening, sir, my fellow panelists, delegates attending the online event, and ladies and gentlemen. The current COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent public health crisis that have brought economic activities in a kind of a complete halt. And as economies are struggling to return to normalcy, we will have a different operating model. The practice of the social distancing, as we see, has already kind of entered in our daily lives, be it in the individuals, even the places where we are working, the governments, the communities, the industries, and so on and so forth, have in fact come to grips with the challenges of minimizing the loss of human lives in the face of this pandemic. So jobs and livelihoods and economic growth will be the key focus areas of the economic policies, and that we have already seen from the recent policy that was announced a couple of months ago by the Indian Prime Minister, which is based or anchored on 5 major areas that include the economy, the infrastructure, systems, vibrant demography, and demand. The recovery packages essentially constituted cash and food for sustaining life and spurring demand, particularly among the farmers, the labor, and the low income. Cash flow easing and working capital for the manufacturing, trading, and services sector. And expenditure for managing the COVID in terms of the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment and related infrastructure. So kickstarting the entire economic process after this kind of a disruption also gives us an opportunity for the economic as well as the environmental revival. However, each of these 5 pillars that we just have seen as a part of the policy and also in a series of discussion over the last few months, the 5 pillars have significant potential to ensure a an economic bounce back based on resource efficiency, which Sir had mentioned quite elaborately, and whose implications can help meet many of our much cherished goals in a most cost-effective manner. So the language around the world on green recovery is about sustainable finance and sustainable jobs. And the language on green economy in India has to be like not merely going back to that pre-COVID policies and strategies, but something that is beyond the conventional market systems or the market supremacy. So there is, however, growing understanding of the imperatives of such a transition, as evident from the draft natural resource efficiency policy with the government of India came up. The second one is the first resource efficiency strategy roadmap that was prepared by the Goa government. So we are seeing some kind of green shoots, if I have to say so far, RE policies and similar thinking for promotion of sustainable consumption and production in India is concerned. But at the same time, there are also ample to think or learn from what is happening at the ground level. So for example, we have seen examples of individual social entrepreneurs having developed eco-friendly and cost-effective products as a part of their fight against the virus. There are several prototypes of touchless hand washing systems produced, particularly using the recycled materials and reused materials, which are being produced either in the small carpenter shop or even at the welding shops. And in addition, because of the tremendous growth of the e-commerce companies who have been really putting recycling of their packaging materials in the forefront in terms of cost saving and promoting a better environmental footprint of their products. There are enough examples to present that resilient supply chains, which we have already kind of discussed in a bit, but it has the potential to grow faster because they can move rapidly to meet customer needs when market demand shifts. So the issue of the premium for local production and the sharing of the premium with the local producers would be critical if we have to really expand the existing local supply chains to a kind of a new normal. So this will also help in producing at scales that have the potential to supply sustainably leapfrog transition in a more responsible consumption and production system. Obviously, as I mentioned about the localization, the implications so far, the benefits are humongous. If you look at the kind of scrap that we are importing, as well as the coke, if we move from the conventional abiotic to the energy sector. So this increased scrap recycling, say for steel production, is estimated to help India imports of scrap as well as coking coal in the steel making sector to the tune of somewhere around 700 billion to and 170 billion respectively for these commodities. And at the same time, if we look at the huge number of mobile phones that are being discarded on a daily basis and the kind of really noble metals that can be extracted are also significant. So not only is going to help in creating jobs in reverse logistics and recycling, it is also going to promote investment opportunities on technologies for material recovery and significantly help in reducing India's import dependencies. In fact, the Ministry of Information Technology had come up with a very interesting scheme a couple of months ago under the promotion of manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors to the tune of almost 25% and for setting up of businesses in India that really promotes production. And I think this is also an opportunity for the community of investors and the technology developers to really tap and explore how they can bring in the element of circularity and see this as a kind of a opportunity to really leapfrog into promoting sustainable technologies that can bring in those materials back into the system. The alliances are extremely important, and we have already seen in the case of the European Commission in 2019, wherein they launched the Circular Plastics Alliance, under which the businesses and all relevant stakeholders teaming up and collaborating to improve the design of recyclability of plastics, which are used across various sectors, right from daily consumer goods to high-end automotive sector. Another example of this network, although this is much more global than regional, is the resource efficient and cleaner production network that promotes resource efficient cleaner production and facilities collaborating that include technology transfer of transfer of relevant knowledge, experiences, and technologies. One of the key challenges in the post-COVID era will be like mainstreaming the resettlement and the rehabilitation, and that is a kind of a big financial challenge, particularly at the state and the local government. I see that the Manrega schemes has the tremendous potential, in fact, to not only create additional livelihood opportunities for these people, but also promote greening of the natural resource, because 63% of the resources goes to natural resource management. So we see possibly some higher activities coming up in this space, provided that we are able to really identify and target them in the short to medium term. Regarding the fiscal space that Dr. Mathur was talking about today in the afternoon, so one of the things that possibly could be taken up is the entire role of the utilization of the DMF. Not that we can use the entire one, but as per the amended Minerals Act, 40% possibly of the resources, almost to the tune of 23,000 crore, which is at present lying with them, can be used for the well-being of the state. Well, there are opportunities in the case of biomass-based feedstocks, because that would be where the local renewable energy supply provisions would exist over and above the solar penetration, which we have seen quite an ambitious implementation over the last few years. And the concept of integrated production process, where waste of a byproduct, which I was just talking about, the entire concept of industrial ecology, getting into a feedstock of the others, not only in the conventional processes, but also in the future processes, including, say, an example could be of a biorefinery. So there is already a rich body of information and best practices of resource efficiency in selected sectors, not only in India and outside. But what is needed is to understand the incremental investments in the form of viability gap funding for the green to compete with the non-green activities. And one of the real examples have been the support and the 25% capital incentive scheme provided by the Ministry of Information Technology. So there is also a need for government interventions to factor in innovation, scaling, reskilling, developing products and services within the market. And most importantly, how we can really scale up the entire aspect of production link incentives across various sectors, which can prove really significant productivity improvement in the future. So the time is ripe to adopt a recovery process based on the principles of circular economy, which will help in enhanced understanding of the interlinkages from the resource use perspective, and how India can utilize the latter more efficiently and unlock the associated benefits in the short and long run. Thank you so much for your attention, and look forward to more interaction in the coming minutes. Thank you.
Hello, am I audible? Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
sir. Then may I now request Professor Ghosh for his comments?
Good evening. Am I audible?
You are? Yes, you are.
Yeah. At the outset,
To be a little briefer than you had planned to be originally. Okay.
pardon?
To be making your comments a little shorter in terms of time than you had originally.
All right, no problem. Good evening to all, and at the outset I must thank Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General TERI, for inviting me to this Kolkata Virtual Sustainable Action Dialogue in the Sustainable Development Summit by TERI and BCCI. We are experiencing the man-made disaster at present, which is, in my opinion, 1,000 times bigger than the impact of Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. And we have to identify the cause, and together we must destroy it so that we never come across such an unprecedented situation. That is the most vulnerable point which I like to highlight here. There are restrictions, lockdown, imposed challenge with respect to many things, including raw material access, product access, distribution channel, and many more things. So coming back to the point of resource efficiency and circular economy, we know that the resource efficiency and the circular economy ultimately leads to an outcome with lesser cost and sustainable green economy, higher productivity, lower material consumption with higher turnout, closing the loop in the areas of production, consumption, and waste management and reverse logistics. In the pandemic, what we have learned and what can be taken forward to make our processes resource efficient and circular economy. The first thing which we have seen is the speeding up and delegate decision making. Previously, for the same point in any industry or anywhere, we were holding the decision for many people for many reasons, and the papers going to different tables and getting delayed for one signature, other signature, and as a matter of fact, it was really cumbersome. Today, in this situation, we are holding a just-in-time system and fit-for-the-purpose planning. Resource allocation is given where it is required only, and instead of annual basis, we are going for a planning of shorter period of time. Second thing which we have experienced and which is very much necessary is that enhanced circularity of natural resources, and that is being already carried out in many organizations throughout the world by redesigning the products and processes. And my experience goes, I am working with many number of groups of SMEs, pan-India and also UK. I have seen they are utilizing lesser amount of material with nearly 40% of the workforce, but having run at 90% of the capacity. So in that way, they reduce the consumption pattern, they reduce the consumption of natural resources, and thus SMEs are becoming smarter. But I am not telling that all the SMEs are doing this, but there are many SMEs in India and UK, in my experience, they are carrying out better results than previously. Now the other point, new business models. If you consider, like day before yesterday, I called a rickshaw puller for some of the, carrying out some of the goods, my personal goods. So I was just discussing what you are doing now. He told that, look, this is my job now, but usually my business was ice cream vendoring. So in that way, he was selling ice cream to door. And as during the pandemic, the kids and the people are not interested to take ice cream. So in that way, he has shifted his business for pulling the car rickshaw. And he told that, sir, I am earning more than previous. The similar thing, all the shops who never thought of door-to-door delivery have adopted this service. So this is a new business model for the small business as well as there are for the big businesses. The third thing, most of the industries now will have to, or many of them are already practicing the robust reverse logistics and recovery of material. Because there is a restriction to access to the raw material and natural resources and the distribution. So they are now by force implementing reverse logistics within the organization. And as a matter of fact, knowingly or unknowingly, their resource efficiency is increasing day by day. And another is redeployment of talents, and also the utilization of the infrastructure. You know that throughout the world, at least in India, we know that many of the IT sector who employ a bigger number of people in our country, now they have shifted their business pattern from working from the office to the working from home. And as a matter of fact, the result has not been declared for the business, but what has been seen that there is no problem for the organization to run their business. On the other hand, they are saving quite a big amount of money with respect to the infrastructure provision and other things are concerned. So the shifting their operation and the resilient supply chain, because previously the supply chain was very big, and as a matter of fact, sometimes there was the lengthy supply chain means there are a lot of problems. But today, due to this pandemic COVID, the supply chain made resilient, and as a matter of fact, they have shifted from bigger supply chain to a smaller supply chain, which is surely reducing the cost and as well as reducing the wastage in the process. The other thing what previous speaker mentioned, that shifting from fossil fuel to renewable sources and use of modern communication system. A class 2 kid, it was never thought that they can utilize the webinar and all other virtual platform. But today, they are using it very efficiently. Of course, there are negative results of this. I'm not going into the detail of this. And more importantly, there are 2 points which I must mention. One is the recent involvement of 4,242 ULBs. 2 years or 3 years back, many of them were not knowing fully well what is the resource recovery and what is the resource efficiency, what is circular economy. But today, in just in last week, the result was declared. 4,242 ULBs are doing very well with respect to the resource recovery processing. India is concerned, which has a multifold effect in the country. And of course, the Atmanirbhar Bharat will definitely give us an impetus towards resource efficiency and circular economy. One more important thing, 2 years, 3 years, or even 5 years back, we were very much disappointed with the data management of the ULBs. And very recently, due to the pandemic, COVID pandemic, all the data of today or yesterday is at the, whenever we require it, immediately at the fingertip it is there. So how much waste is generated, how much waste is recovered, how much is other things, how many people are affected, how many people are died, how many people are recovered, everything is on the fingertips. So this is a great thing which has been done in India, and we have to take the lead from this experience, because if I don't have data, I know nothing. If I know data, then there are a lot of improvement, where the resource recovery, where the resource efficiency is falling down, everything is known and we can take more actions. So in that way, one more important thing which I must mention here, that India has developed a draft national resource efficiency policy in 2019. Of course, that has to be revisited now because of the pandemic situation. But most importantly, whatever be the revisiting and revision, the government of India must make it a confirmed policy at the earliest, whatever is possible. So these are some of my points, what I thought I should share. And more importantly, and one more thing, the general waste generation throughout India has reduced by 40%. Of course, there is a huge amount of single-use plastics, which is enhanced by 30% in the metro cities. Of course, in the new normal series of explores, metrics, and data in the age of coronavirus, it is necessary that we document all the changes in behavior and practices and develop a guideline for the change scenario. And I'm quite sure that pandemic has given us a lot of hazards, lot of problem. It is a tragedy to the human, but on the other side, from the pandemic situation, we have lots of things to learn, and we have to be smarter. We know that where we are weak and where we have to improve. With this, I wish that we will make a more circular, more circularity in our processes and enhance resource efficiency by adopting different practices in India and outside India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ghosh. May I now request Dr. Divya Tiwari to give her comments. Dr. Divya Tiwari.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can see you, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, and nice to meet you, Mr. Ajay Shankar. Didn't get the opportunity to interact with you earlier. And nice to hear all the panelists here. I'll introduce myself because I'm not a regular we work in the area of waste management, and hence this topic is very close to our heart, which is resource efficiency. And Sahas is a Bangalore-based organization, but currently we have projects across 9 districts in the country. And we are also doing a lot of work in rural areas. So, what I will talk today will come from our experience in rural area, because when we are talking about resource efficiency, I would say cities by far are, following a certain kind of pattern. If we really want to turn the table, if we really want to turn things around, the need of the hour is to make our rural areas, our villages self-sufficient, because that's where the game is. Cities are by and large, you have the industrial and the regular supply chains exist. So, yes, resource efficiency is a driving factor, but putting all these current scenarios in the picture, a lot of people have gone back from the cities. We can see it in Bangalore on daily basis that there is definitely, at least 30% reduction compared to the regular population that is there in the city. The roads are empty and, PGs are not, people are not there. So a lot of people have gone back to their smaller hometowns or to their villages. And some may come back for, livelihood, but I'm sure having lived in the village now, they might prefer continuing to live there if they have livelihood. And they are certainly, if we can make the whole economy and, consumption pattern more decentralized, there will be more livelihood opportunities, and the government will not have to generate jobs. The aim should be to generate livelihood rather than jobs. And that's where we feel that, if you look at it from the resource efficiency perspective, the two tie in very well. This is the demand of the hour to generate livelihood, and if you do become local consumption, local production centers, that will also, environmentally and socially, it will do a lot of benefit. So I, since we work on the ground, so I had some very specific, ask and action points. So if I look at the consumption patterns in the villages, one thing which, people can immediately switch to, which can be done locally, is the sanitation and hygiene products. The entire shampoo, soap, sanitizer, cleaning products, all these, can be locally produced with natural products. This is already proven, shown. It can be done on a small scale, and it will make a massive difference to the amount of waste that is getting generated in the villages. If you look at, the amount of shampoo sachets and amount of, I personally saw aloe vera sachet in a village. So, there is a lot of demand for hygiene and beauty products and dry snacks. I have seen myself that if you, earlier in South, if you go to any condiment shop, there'll be no shop which will not have bananas. Every shop, even if it's a clothing shop or a stationery shop, it will have a bunch of banana. But unfortunately, I was in one of the rural areas and I saw a child. There was a tea shop. The tea shop did not have a banana thing. And a small child walked up. He gave 1 rupee to the person there and he picked up a chips packet. That's how he started his day. So things are, because the kind of, the media hype that we have created around chips and biscuits, it has created a huge impact on what is happening in our rural areas. Kids are eating wrong things. There is a culture of starting the day with a bread or a biscuit, not with a proper breakfast. Mothers don't cook, and people are, spending all their time watching videos. And these things are not available. You don't have bananas available in Karnataka. It is unbelievable. So I really strongly feel that government has to come up with policies which will drive, if not everything. I understand there are certain products where centralization is critical, be it infrastructure, steel cannot be manufactured on a, decentralized manner. Steel will be manufactured in a centralized manner. But there are a lot of items which today have proven business models in decentralized manner, using local natural resources. But the two things need to be done. One is obviously policy and taxation benefit from the government. Government needs to drive this. Second, the behavioral change. The rural population is looking up to, the flashy ad of, Akshay Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan, selling Maggie and whatnot. So we need to have a counter messaging. Thankfully, through WhatsApp, a lot of these, yes, it's a nuisance, but a lot of positive messaging is also going on healthy lifestyle and healthy options. But it is important that government takes it up on a large scale and brings about this behavioral change, which will, then encourage people to, choose correct products, to consume right kind of products. So that is the second ask which I have. And the third thing, which we feel is, organizations like TERI and other development organizations can provide is, there is a lot of information sitting in the local traditions and heritage. We are losing it. So if, organizations like development organizations can do this, there are local knowledges around what kind of food you should eat, what kind of construction material you should use, what kind of farming methodologies you should have without relying on these, centralized systems of fertilizers, etc. Those need to be extracted, documented, and popularized, locally. Karnataka will have something else, Tamil Nadu will have something else, Assam will have something else. So there is a need to look at these things and extract this knowledge and, get some actionable things out of it and popularize these ideas. So these are very, and the fourth thing which we have been asking, to cut down on fertilizer subsidy and rather promote organic compost. That's really the need of the hour, and all of you in Delhi, you should drive it. I don't have to talk about how harmful the pesticides and the fertilizers have been to our entire, agriculture, food production methodology. So if you can go back to composting, a lot of waste which is today sitting in our cities, we don't have anybody who wants it. You can have a supply chain where this goes back to the villages, and you really have the circular economy. So from waste perspective, two things. I feel if there can be policies which will push for hygiene products, beauty and hygiene products to be made locally, consumed locally. So you have that much less packaging going into the villages. and dry snacks, chips and biscuits can be done locally. People can eat chips, but they can be made in the village. You don't need Lay's chips. You don't need Britannia biscuits to be sent to villages. It can totally be done locally. You'll generate jobs. There'll be a better quality stuff and less packaging, so less waste. That is one. And second is on the fertilizer and composting. And we'll be very happy to provide details and data around this. But this is the ask which is coming from somebody who works on the field. With this, I'll close.
Thank you. Very clear and practical suggestions. We'll certainly see what we can do with it. May I request Dr. Rachna Arora now to hear her thoughts?
Sure. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're visible and audible.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And I understand this is like just the end of the day for all the participants who have also been hearing. I just have 2 slides, if you can allow me to just put it so that I think it also draws a little more attention to what I would like to just see. So just give me a minute. And these are just 2 slides, not 5 minutes that I have. Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes.
So I think something that have not been a little bit attention to what's happening across the globe. Because I work with GIZ and currently we're implementing a project which is with the European Union. I'll just spend a minute on that project as well. But currently, I think what's happening or being discussed across the globe is a European Union Green Deal, EU Green Deal, which was actually just released pre-corona. It was released in December 2019. And I think what the EU, what the 27 member states have been trying to do is to still keep it as a priority, because I think this is the center of how European Union looks at driving the future, driving the economy further. And I think now the biggest challenge is, and still people are quite optimistic, it would actually look at an entire regenerative growth strategy, considering the EU Green Deal principles and also considering
Our activity
stimulus package. So, of course, I think what is in the heart of the circular economy dialogue is the climate change, is the SDG agenda, which still remains as a priority, but it also pushes the European Union to actually reduce its material footprint further, and also still consider that the circular material recycling rates still remain the pre-COVID, at least if not similar, with higher targets, with higher reduction. We can still achieve a reduced material footprint. So I think that's at the core of the EU circular economy package, which was also released in March this year, and the green recovery targets which are there. Now, I think what has been recently undertaken also is a G20 finance ministers discussion or a meeting, where also there was an agreement to actually have more recovery stimulus packages, which is more inclusive and people-centered. I think what Divya was also trying to put in is that these recovery or this looks at people-centric approach rather than just an economic agenda, because I think this is what COVID has actually really taught us, of how exactly do we make policies and strategies which are much more inclusive. And of course, it reduces the inequality, which is also to be considered considered significantly. So that's from the European Union Green Deal. How can this be recovered or related, at least from the Indian perspective? I think not just from the work which we do on ground, but also just seeing on several dialogues, especially on single-use plastics. I think this is very, very clear. And the way biomedical waste is now being dealt with every city, every local village and everywhere else. I think we also just need to see how this thing could actually get reversed. So the targets, that I've also been part of some of the committees with the government where we have seen the targets around, say, for instance, on electronic waste, the full discussion now with the industries to actually pull it back, just get back to the, so kind of just reduce these targets which are existing. And I think this is where we are not doing a business as usual. We'll have to look at innovative ways of why the stringent targets, stringent policies, and of course need to consider greening as well as also need to consider sustainable approaches. So I think this is where a lot of packages across different ministries, across different departments need to consider resource efficiency, circular economy at the heart, so that sustainability remains within these existing programs and schemes as such. And I think local production brings a lot of focus on resource efficiency, but we also need to consider ways and means of how these short-term goals could actually lead to sustainable lifestyles. The way we have spent our 6 months are actually very different from what we were doing earlier. Can it remain as a consumer? Can we still adopt sustainable lifestyles, reduce our environmental footprint, reduce our environmental impact? When there's severe pollution in Delhi, why is it now that we, of course, remain at home, we work from home? Maybe this is an approach which we continue if we have similar air pollution levels in Delhi in the future. Can we still follow these kind of practices across organizations, across consumer markets, so that we adopt a little sustainable lifestyle which actually foresees a better future for all of us? And I think also what COVID clearly brought out was the public health interconnectedness with the environmental issues. And I think this needs to be considered across different policies as it is. Then I think jobs remains one of the key focus. But I think jobs considering not just 1 hour, which is recycling, but also just looking at repairability, because there have been very, very innovative business models that have come across different cities in the last 6 months, which actually showcase that there is a demand from people to actually have more repairable products. Look at reusability principles. It is a demand from the consumers, but on the other hand, with some particular strata or with some set of people, reusability could also become a challenge, because of course not people want to use products which have been used by someone else. Now this is a challenge, but I think it is coming up with very interesting business models across different cities, and this needs to be promoted through innovative local solutions, as Divya was just mentioning, across different cities, across different states. And I think what remains as some of the key elements to define a resource efficient recovery would be, of course, just an inclusive and equitable economy, but also looking at a lot of cross-sectoral collaboration. Now, this is also a learning which we had in the project that we are implementing with the Ministry of Environment on resource efficiency. We actually need different ministries, different sectors to actually collaborate if we are looking at a better resource or a circular economy environment, because otherwise it's easy to say, but it's not usually works out as a successful business model for the industry to adopt principles and practices as circularity would like us to do. Supply chain risk is a big issue, and I think this becomes very, very clear now with COVID. And of course, local sourcing, local production remains focus for the government. It still needs to come up in a very, very clear way. The messaging has to be clear for the industry, and of course, viable models have to come around it. The rest of the things I think I've more or less covered. I'll just take a minute to actually put forward. I don't know if it's already there, but EU and India actually adopted a declaration just a month back in July, which looks at an entire declaration on circular economy model. And this is, I think, a big success for two countries to actually come forward, and for two economies to actually come forward and just say that circularity and resource efficiency remain at the heart of our response to COVID, and also in terms of future designing the business models and the way economy could actually grow. So this brings forward the entire agenda of SDGs, climate change targets, and also looks at bringing in new business models and research and innovation as one of the key principles or targets to achieve these kind of technology moves. Just a minute to just talk about what we do as a project. This is a European Union funded resource efficiency initiative, and it actually promotes the circular economy package or thinking, which is in the EU, tries to adopt that to the Indian policies, and just it's setting the framework around it. So Shavik mentioned the National Resource Efficiency Draft Policy, which is still with the ministry as a draft. But of course, I think this needs to be now relooked from the COVID lens and just be considered, because a lot of production, if it happens in India, of course, I think our resource efficiency principles could actually change drastically as compared to the policy which was put forward in 2019. But what is also very clearly to be looked at, the resource recovery part, because a lot of rare metals or other minerals are still not available in India. So these things have to be considered when we come at defining targets and indicators for this strategy to take its real shape and form. And these are some of the impacts of what we have done, but I would just leave that. Yeah, I think it's just too late to actually talk about it, but I'll just leave these slides and happy to come back for any questions and clarifications. So thanks for.
Thank you. Thank you. Brought it to our attention. May I now request Professor Veena Sahajwala for her comments and thoughts?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's an absolute privilege and an honor to be here. I'd like to thank your Director General of TERI, Dr. Ajay Mathur, for the invitation to speak. So I'm located in Sydney, Australia, the University of New South Wales. And indeed, it's quite exciting because it wasn't only a few hours ago that I guess Dr. Shawik, a part of this collaboration that we're having between Australia and India to talk about circular economy related to plastics. And I'll pick up on different types of materials. We've heard about plastics, we've heard about electronic waste, rare earths, and all of these different types of materials that are clearly there in our economy. But the central theme that brings it all together, of course, which is the topic front and center in everyone's minds, whether it's Australia or it's India, it's around that ability to create livelihoods. We've heard about references to livelihoods and jobs. So I think that's certainly an important issue. If I might just share this screen if I can, and I'm not sure whether you can actually see my screen. Touch upon the point which kind of nicely sums up what we've been hearing from everyone. The theme of decentralization has come up. Obviously, we're interested in understanding how we're going to be efficient with our resources. But I think the important element, if we start to think about how we connect the recycling and the ability to do that recycling of materials, but to do it where we align it with transformation and production strategies at a micro level. And this is where, of course, some of the technological advances that we've been making in Australia around our micro factories. These micro factories are really about enabling us to take all kinds of end-of-life materials and to imagine a solution which allows you to recycle, reform, and manufacture products. So whether these are products... sorry.
Veena, can you just look at your computer screen? The slide seems to have shifted to the Zoom page.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna just try and see if I can share the screen. Okay, let me. Sorry about. Yeah, is that okay now? Can you see my screen at all?
Can see you and hear you.
Can you see this? Can you see the screen, the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, terrific. Sorry about that. I've got too many screens open and it's getting midnight in the night here in Sydney. So I must be getting a bit sleepy. So I just wanted to make the point as to why microfactories. And I'll use examples of how we've actually deployed these technologies, microfactories in Australia, showing real world tangible outcomes, both examples picking up one from remote regional towns, really tiny populations, which has again been brought up today, but also picking up an example from a large capital city like Sydney. What we've done in both of these examples are develop solutions for microfactories where the scale is just right and fit for purpose. So I think that's the other part of the conversation, that often when we think about our ability to manufacture products, the key thing that everyone wants to talk about is, do we have economies of scale? And I guess the point of distinction here in setting up and developing microfactories is that these are actually economies of purpose. And what I mean by economies of purpose, as opposed to economies of scale, is it's very much about understanding what are the volumes, what are the needs, and indeed whether you're talking about recycling precious metals, rare earths, or some of the more types of more ubiquitous materials like plastics and glass. In all of these cases, of course, you've got to imagine what makes economic sense. We have to, of course, keep in mind in all of these production capacities, as much as possible, as again we've heard today, is minimizing the transport cost and footprint. So the ability of a microfactory to create these solutions in a decentralized manner that deliver benefits to local communities is going to be important. So whether we're talking about decentralization, as we've of course been hearing about renewable energy, let's start to think about renewable materials. And so if our end-of-life waste resources can be channeled directly into our capacity to manufacture and transform them into products, that enables a win-win outcome. So, even if you think about in COVID times, if you think about the personal protective equipment, PPE, that I'm sure medical professionals need to use, imagine if you could manufacture your face shields and all the protective equipment, and imagine if you could do that in a way that you could access locally available, polymeric materials, your plastics, have small production capacities in a microfactory setting to be able to manufacture your PPE. And that's exactly what we've done in our microfactories. We've taken, examples of different kinds of waste plastics that are already available in our economy, transformed them into different types of PPE, and face shields is a classic example. The reason why I use that is something that we can relate to the fact that when we live in times of COVID, and clearly that's a challenge for everyone in the world, how do you access essential goods? And certainly that's a classic example. And in this particular instance, what we have actually demonstrated are that microfactories that we run at the university. So in addition to the research labs, the Smart Centers research labs at UNSW, we also have microfactories, and these demonstration scale facilities that we run at the university cover some of these critical production capacities that include materials like plastics, like glass, and of course a lot of our electronic resources where we transform them into useful, valuable materials. We've heard about rare earths being mentioned, so that's a big focus of what we're doing in the world of electronics. How do you harness a lot of the rare earth materials, and of course the expensive precious materials as well. So in these types of examples, I just wanted to get to the point that if someone's sort of thinking, well, how do you enable collection systems to take place? How do you enable, we've heard about challenges associated with packaging. We've heard about challenges associated with delivery of sustainable and more affordable solutions in our economy. The example I wanted to pick up in the rural areas and regional areas here in Australia, we've got a microfactory that takes waste glass and waste textiles and converts those into green ceramic products that we're now putting into building applications. So all these are just examples that you can actually take locally available waste resources, in this case glass, that's available to create a lot of products like tiles for floors, walling application, insulation materials, and we're doing that almost entirely out of waste resources. So taking materials like our synthetic textiles, our glass-based materials, we've created insulating products that are fit for purpose for built environment. So again, in all of the thinking around how we actually meet the needs, not just from an affordable housing perspective and a more sustainable housing perspective, is, remember, I was referring to the words economies of purpose. So in this case, if the purpose is to be able to create products that are not only going to be suitable and are engineered products that can be manufactured in microfactories, they can also be produced in the volumes and quantities that are going to be needed. So what a small town might need and a lot of communities around it might need might be quite different to what a large city like Sydney might need. So we've got property and construction companies like Mirvac in Sydney who are using some of these types of products that we've manufactured out of our microfactories. So I just wanted to sort of paint that big picture that microfactories have certainly been deployed. yes, it's an emerging technology being developed at UNSW, but the advantage of developing these types of solutions where you can actually deliver decentralization, couple recycling with manufacturing, really allows a win-win outcome for everyone. So yes, there may be informal sectors in recycling that clearly we know exists in India and indeed in many other parts of the world. The critical issue is how do you enable the hard work that goes into collecting our end-of-life waste products, but converting them into a value-added product means the person who's collecting waste and generates a livelihood through these informal sectors can actually generate a better outcome in terms of wages by creating a more value-added product and enabling that entrepreneurial skills that we've heard about so often to actually deliver highly valued products in the economy. So the ability to decentralize means that it also enables a win-win outcome, of course, for our people and for our planet. So thank you so much for the invitation to speak here again this evening, and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So I must thank the panelists for being a little briefer than they had planned to be. So thank you.
I guess it is time for the concluding remarks. And may I say, first of all, many thanks to all the panelists, to Mr. Ajay Shankar, both for his initial setting the scene for this session, as well as for chairing it, to my colleague Sauvik Bhattacharya, Professor S.K. Ghosh, Divya, Rachana, and of course, Professor Veena Sahajwala. And Professor Sahajwala, I'm truly grateful to you. It's past midnight, and yes. You seem fresh as if it was early morning. Many thanks. I think no discussion on resource efficiency and recycling is complete till we know of the concept of microfactories, and a very powerful concept to take the utilization of wastes away from the way we always do it, which is to go one level lower in quality rather than making it into a product which is higher in quality. This is true the way resource efficiency occurs today. If you look at, for example, paper recycling, which is very, very common in India, all of the paper is collected and goes into pulping factories around our major cities. I'm told there are something like 23 pulping factories around Delhi, where this collected paper is recycled and made into the lower grade of paper, which is cardboard. And today the situation has come when the kabadiwalas are not willing to buy cardboard, because there is nothing that the cardboard can be converted into. It tells us of the importance of both collecting the scrap material, the used material, which is extremely important if we want to move towards a resource efficient economy, and of ensuring the quality of the collected material. In one of your members, one of the esteemed members of the BCCI, Tata Steel, has created a company called Tata Scrap Iron, which collects scrap iron. But one of the major problems that occurs is that the scrap iron comes in very many different qualities. And I think it is important that we move to the kind of quality that is needed. And if we, as the collector, need to pay for it, then that payment has to be adjusted in the price that is given. Consequently, I believe that certification of waste materials is a must. Now, certification cannot be a high-cost effort. It cannot mean a person moving to, for example, collection of waste paper. Consequently, for various classes of wastes, we need to provide certification categories. Certification category A1, A2, B1, B2, whatever. But what I think that will do is help in making this market much more liquid than it is. The second thing is, as I said, collection. It's one thing to have the waste material on the user's premises. It's something quite else to have it in the premises of the recycler. There are costs involved in moving it from my premises to the recycler's premises, and these costs need to be met. In the case of first grade paper, we are actually paid in India for collecting it. But once it comes to cardboard, there's nobody willing to pick it up. I think it is telling us that to enable resource efficiency, the costs must be included. And the costs, so either it's an economic issue or it's a regulatory issue. We have talked about the need for regulation. I think it is important. If you go to the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve, there's a guy there who sells, there are many people, but there's a guy there who sells chips, which come in these multi-layered packages or whatever it's called. You know what he does? Because of the regulations, when you buy it from him, he'll cut open the packet and put it in a paper bag and give it to you. And he collects the multi-layered plastic bags because it is, with the force of law and the force of the stick, the Forest Department ensures that the Biosphere Reserve does not collect multi-layered plastic or plastic of any sort for that matter. Consequently, this is possible when the number of sources are few and when we have a strict and strong implementation. It cannot occur where you have very many polluters. In those places, we need to create an economic point of view. And my thesis is, it would be great if this money is collected at the time when we are buying a product. It's collected, goes into a cess, and once a person has bought the material back for recycling, he's provided that money. And out of that, he can pay for recycling, out of that, he can pay for the collection, and whatever he makes from the recycling. We need to create business models that enable the circular economy to become effective. My colleagues in this panel have spoken about the resource efficiency side. That's obviously important. It will work. I know from personal experience that, because there is a very strong personal incentive, there's a productivity incentive, there's a money incentive in enabling a smaller amount of energy, or for that matter, any resource, because what it means is that I save money. So that is something that works. We need to ensure that this, at least through the things like the star labeling on energy, becomes available for a range of raw materials. But on the other side, we also need to make sure that the recycling occurs by enabling collection and by enabling the certification of the quality of the material that is collected. With that, I would like to again thank all our panelists and all of you who are still here for this extremely interesting session. Many, many thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ajay, for your concluding remarks. And I think it's all coming together, and there are a few very interesting ideas that came up in this discourse. Particularly, I thought of two aspects that I thought I could mention. One is localizing of SDGs. That was something that crossed my mind for quite some time, that when we look at business value chain, to look at inclusive development and business value proposition in a localized manner. And that is something which has been talked about in this dialogue. The other thing was the purpose-driven economy, not economy of scale, but economy of purpose. And I think that is so very important when we are talking about circular economy. Certainly, resource efficiency and the transition to circular economy would not just help in natural resource and material security, but certainly would improve the environmental and economic outcomes. I think if Dr. Ajay Mathur has made energy efficiency work in India, I'm sure he can make resource efficiency also work in India. So it's just a matter of time, and we will see how it will all pan out. I do see the linkages between material use and the different types of circular business models. And I think it all links up to all aspects of food and energy, water security, food and energy security, for that matter, ethical value chains, business value chains, climate change, and practically every economic activity. So it all comes together. I'm so happy that Bengal Chamber, we were able to host this virtual dialogue. And I can see definitely there's a symbiotic relationship now that is really growing from strength to strength between TERI and Bengal Chamber. Thank you very much, Dr. Mathur, for making this happen. Many thanks to Mr. Ajay Shankar for chairing it and making the initial remarks. It was absolutely very pertinent. And thank you, Annapurna, for making this dialogue a success, and to all the panelists. On behalf of Bengal Chamber, I extend my thanks and thank you very much indeed.